Go. Hey, here we are. Great. So welcome Mounir to the Quattro Chiacchere format with DeFi Italy. We are very happy to have you here. And great. Today we will discuss about Paraswap, the platform that you invented, and you are the founder and CTO, and one of the few members that basically bring alive this beautiful platform. So the first question that we want to ask you is, how do you come up with the idea, and when basically does it born, and how many you are?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, to be among you. So Paraswap is a liquidity aggregator on the Ethereum blockchain. We aggregate decentralized exchanges and lending protocol and any smart contract that has liquidity for users. And we split those into across those protocols so that we offer the best price for the user. So the idea came in Web Summit in 2018
Uh-huh.
in Lisbon. I was there and I spent some time with the crypto entrepreneurs, and we had some interesting discussions at the time. And what caught my eyes was the categories of product they were working on.
Mm-hmm.
So from traceability to identity to the best possible wallets, which were cool ideas, but none of them was addressing the real issues that stand between us and the mass adoption we're looking for. So those problems, in my opinion, are purely financial. That's the aim of crypto in the first place. And that was the time I started thinking about addressing these issues. And obviously, the biggest one is the liquidity, which is the biggest and the hardest, and that will bring the users. And it's a big egg and chicken problem. So I started looking at DEXs and liquidity protocols at the time, and they were all addressing this problem, and each one making some cool innovation. So then the idea came in of bringing all this liquidity into a single place, so we maximize all this liquidity
Mm.
that users have access to. So in the beginning, I started with something like an Expedia product for DEX liquidity. Started as a price comparator for users. It will get you a point two to the cheapest price, and when you execute, you do it in place without hitting the UI, which was a cool product and was a pure retail product. So it was like a decentralized Coinbase, which didn't get enough traction as I was expecting. So we did this famous pivot that startups often do when they launch a first iteration. And 2 months later, we went through for a pure liquidity aggregator that will split orders across those DEXs and has a price feed on chain and so on. And we launched that in September, and it works pretty well. It took some time. It took like 2 months, around 2 months, to start getting some traction, and it works pretty well. So we went from like zero to the top 10 dApps in February, and we also survived very well the Black Thursday. Yeah.
What were the first DEXs that you have integrated in the beginning?
We started with Uniswap, Kyber, and Bancor. Then we added the Oasis because
But
those were like three
even
were
during
multi.
even
Yes,
during
sir.
your Expedia experience in that time,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
started.
We had four. You had the four, yeah, yeah. During the Expedia phase, we had the four, yeah, yeah.
And why did you never integrate, for example, Ether Delta?
So we have looked into it. So we have some kind of criteria before looking into some dexes. Decentralization is definitely the biggest one, and the most important, like technically speaking, is having a order fillable contracts, which is I think the case at Ether Delta. But the third criteria is the performance. So we need to be able to access the price as fast as possible. That's a big value proposition we have compared to our competitors, also to other UIs. And Ether Delta has a way of that is not can't guarantee you a fast responses because you're relying on their API and so on. Yeah, that's among the reasons that sustainability of the price feed is something. All the performance of the price feed is a very important criteria we have.
Yeah. And did you come out with the idea alone, or do you have some co-founders that you work with? Or?
Yeah, I started alone, so I bootstrapped the product from coding to UX to some improvised design that I have until September when we launched the aggregator. So Sabib, who is a world-class Solidity developer, joined me and worked on this contract that is almost the one we're still using, and now is working with me on the V2 of the smart contracts. And we also have Breeze from Monolith, who joined us like a week ago, and like in nights and weekends, and helping on marketing and operations and onboarding new apps into our tech. But still me working full time and wearing many hats. That's also due to my previous experiences. I did many startups, and I worked also some small ventures like selling products online and things like that. It helps on being able to wear many hats at the same time and switching roles, which is like
great. And um, what about the value that the user may have using your platform? I mean, you aggregate liquidity, so basically, what I'm expecting is that if I have a big order, I can fulfill it in a very convenient way. But at the same time, also, if I'm not a big user, can I have some sort of advantage instead of doing the same trade on Kyber or Uniswap or Banco or whatever?
Yeah. That's a very important question when user ask us. The value proposition obviously is getting you the best price or beating the market price because of the aggregation. By taking slices of prices from each text, and that works better if the orders are bigger. The bigger the order, the most attractive this offer is. But sometimes, even if orders are big, we still use one DEX because this is the best combination of one. For instance, typically it happens in Curve when you're doing either DAI to USDC or vice versa. Curve has often the best prices. Sometimes we use Oasis or 0x or others, but the point of using us in this case is gas refunds. So we use a concept called gas token, which will refund you gas within the transaction, and it's up to 40%. In theory, it's 50% of what you're spending, but we say 40 because there is some overhead on the contracts. So not
Just
to
destroy.
disappoint users, we say around 40. So it's an interesting concept. So it's due to how the EVM works, or the Ethereum virtual machine works. When you add storage, because it's the thing that costs more on the blockchain, you pay some extra gas. It costs some gas. But when you remove this storage, the blockchain rewards you by gas refunds. So it refunds you some gas. So gas token automates that. It's when you mint it, it creates some like artificial contracts, which is some kind of storage. And when you use it, and typically you use it when you pay a higher gas fee or when the price of gas is high, we have a function that computes that, and it will destroy this function, those contracts. So when the contract is destroyed, space is freed, so you get refunds. If you destroy, like, the max amount is 50%. So that's the incentive. Users get these discounts, and we saw that a lot in Black Thursday, when the price of gas went something like 9 to 10 times, and people were heavily using us. And some people told me they spent something like $800 to $1,000 in 24 hours only in Paraswap. Obviously they made some good profits meanwhile, but yeah, it has a huge value for the users anyways. And in our case, at least they get this incentive of paying less gas.
Okay, that's pretty extensive. So Actually, how many providers do you have integrated? You just named Kyber, Bank, or Uniswap, but I know that you have also 0x, but
Yeah.
also other pools or other mechanisms that, from my understanding, you are not just splitting the orders in a way that I get the best price, but you are also, how to say, find the good recipe to spend the lowest from a Ethereum transaction point of view, but also to get the best price. So you leverage, maybe you told about Curve Finance or AAVE or whatever. So how many do you have?
So the number is, I think, around 14, and we count all the pools of Kyber in one, of Curve in one, knowing that they have 4, and we have 3 of the 4. So if you count like the absolute count, we have 17, but
Great.
to speak objectively, it's 14. Plus, what you see, the multipath is just the aggregation of those. So that's like swap using multi steps. Yeah, so it's around 14, and we're adding new ones. We're adding, for instance, Balancer very soon, and we're adding as well Lend for Me. And yes, we continue adding new dexes each time we see enough liquidity and good tech like Balancer. They just started; their liquidity is growing every day, but we definitely love the tech, so we're gonna integrate them very soon.
This is very interesting. I see in the list of the liquidity providers also Paraswap pool. So do you have also some sort of dark pools or private pools?
Yeah. Yeah. You can see it that way. We see it more as a private pool. It couldn't be perceived as a dark pool as well, because inside the Paraswap pool there are market makers who create orders that can be filled only by our smart contracts, and we use 0x as the settlement layer, not layer, settlement
Yeah.
dex.
Settlement
So,
X. Yeah.
not the layer, sorry, no,
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
layer.
No.
Yeah,
It's okay.
so that we keep the decentralized fashion of doing things, and also there is no other way of doing this instead besides doing this on chain on a dex. So they created orders. They provide us with an API, a REST API, where when you go to Paraswap, say what's the price of ETH today, we're gonna query all of those dexes, and among those dexes we're gonna query their API as well, which will quote us on the price, run the aggregation engine, and find the best combination. So also Paraswap Pool now, it's something that we're going to grow in 2020. We're going to onboard other market makers, and we're going to also offer other kinds of pools. Today we have only 0x, but we're talking to Balancer because they have a concept called private pools. So this could be interesting. So we can see other algo traders who
Algo
can
trade.
provide us liquidity, and they can leverage the way Balancer works with all their features of balancing and influencing the price, and lots of cool stuff they have Balancer. So that can be a very good fit for the algo. Typically, those are algo traders that we fill on the Paraswap pool. We're thinking maybe in the future would open up this for anyone to contribute, but this time out of efficiency of the liquidity. Typically, algo traders, they have a lot of liquidity to cover for the needs. That will be the focus for 2020.
But who can contribute to the Paraswap pool, and how do you incentivize, or you plan to incentivize the market makers?
Yeah, so those who provide the liquidity on the pool right now are, as I said, algo traders. So they typically do arbitrage in like the Binance, the Krakens of the world, and they make a profit typically. And the reasoning behind that is that I will buy in Binance and sell to Paraswap users. That's the reason behind that. So they are making profits. It's not the model of the centralized exchanges where they pay market makers to provide liquidity. That's something that is not really needed, and that's a new pattern or a new model that's emerging. And we saw other competitors doing something similar. Is that they are self-incentivized because they can earn on arbitrage.
Yeah. And but do you put some priority to the Paraswap pool than the other?
No. So we have a aggregation engine. It's like a black box. Those are only numbers that enters. And the way it works, we're gonna interrogate all those dexes. For instance, you're asking for, say, to simplify 100 ETH for DAI. Those are not the specifics, but it's not very far away from the way it works, from the architecture. So you're asking for 100 ETH to DAI. It will split the price into 100 chunks, like 1, 2, 3, 4 till 100, and it will look for the prices of each chunk. And at the end, you will have some kind of metrics of DEX and prices, DEX and prices. And this matrix that is sent to the price aggregator, who's gonna do an optimization. This is like optimization, classic optimization problems that are NP hard. So you have to find some optimized algorithms to solve them. And that matrix just say DEX 1, those are the prices, DEX 2, those are the prices. Find me the best optimization, like the optimal price. So there is no prioritization of one DEX over the other, because our value proposition is finding the best price. So this will be contradictory to what we're selling, and it can be proved. So users can go themselves and mathematically prove that this price we're providing is correct or not, by looking into other dexes and the prices in real time, and you can double check the price if you want to do it mathematically speaking. And one thing we take into account in the next version, we don't do it yet, is the weight of each dex and the weight of gas at the end. For instance, Uniswap takes less gas, so will have like a coefficient of X. Kyber takes a little bit more, Bancor, and so on. And even, for instance, Uniswap, if you do ETH to DAI or ETH to token, it takes like some kind of gas. But if you do ETH to DAI, ETH to token, it will take more gas because it will do a multi-path transaction behind the scenes. So all those weights will be taken into account on the next version. That's the only thing that matters.
And if we have, for example, in the chat some algo traders, how can they participate in the pool?
Yes. So we have an API that is a RESTful API that gets you the price and allows you to build the transaction if you want. We have an SDK in JavaScript right now, and we'll be picking one in Python because most algo traders use
Python.
use Python, and some use Go as well. So we're also looking to build stuff with Go, so this can be good. And the next version of the contract, we will have, and that's something we had since the beginning, but we didn't advertise. There is only one dApp that is using it, called CoTrader. It's on-chain price feed. So for some dApps who want to be fully on-chain, they can use our on-chain price feed, and they can execute directly on the smart contracts, and that will be available more developed and more with all the new features on the next versions, and they can do everything in a trustless way. So there will be no need to use our API, no need to use our API for prices, not for building. You can plug into the smart contract, get the best price, and then go to the smart contract and execute without needing to use us. And so for some dApps, that's critical. And especially some who are fully on-chain, they have like no admin key, all that stuff. It's critical for them to use everything on-chain.
And can it be considered also like Oracle competitor, this kind of feature?
Some people told us that our price feed could be perceived also as a price oracle, which could be possible. to some oracles that they will look for the price in multiple off-chain sources, but they can also consider us as a on-chain price feed. But I think this should be limited to a one sources among others. Not, we shouldn't be relied on as the source amount of price, because we use mostly AMMs, and as you know, AMMs are easily manipulable.
Yeah.
You can be easily manipulated. So it's enough to manipulate Uniswap for some arbitrageurs to do the same in Kyber that uses Uniswap in Bancor and so on. So yeah, everything is related there right now. So I would say it's good to use us, but be careful. We are not a source of the truth. So yeah, and especially for some low liquid tokens.
Great. And that's pretty interesting. So basically, we have a market where there are user integrators that can use you to get the best price for their users or for themselves, but also the side of market makers that is emerging, or algo traders. So now the question becomes easy. I mean, what are the fees of the protocols, and if the fees are zero, what will be in the future?
Yeah, correct. Now it's zero, as you said. We only get Kyber fees. They share their fees with us, which doesn't impact the price for the users. And there are multiple ideas we're addressing right now. We're not in a hurry for collecting fees, given that the market is still small. So it wouldn't be as significant to sustain like a business right now. But there's this simple idea of taking fees on transactions. Like for when users make transactions, we can say each time we beat the market, we get them some good deals, we can take 0.1, 0.2%, something like that. That's an option. The other one say, okay, you will be getting the best price at say 200. We got you 205, so we'll take 10% of that or 20% of that or something like that. This could be an idea. But there are also other ideas of never taking fees from the transactions, but monetizing only the private pool. And also, for instance, monetizing on some more complex financial products, like say options. For instance, you would buy ETH at 200 and you can pay some premiums and guarantee that the price of ETH will stay at 200 as a protection or as a hedge for you. So if the price will drop, if the price will drop, you are sure that you are bought at a good price, and you can also liquidate your position. At some point, you will lose only the premiums you paid.
So like AGIC or OPIN, basically, something like similar.
Yeah, things like that. Exactly. Yeah.
Great. And the other question is, how do you honestly compare with the other players in the market? In my mind, I came up with DexAG or 1inch Exchange. So which could be the difference? One that I can say that I notice immediately is that your price discovery and price feed is extremely faster than 1inch or DexAG. Which are I mean, your competitive advantage in addition to the fee to zero?
Yeah, so everyone is taking zero right now for the same reasons I mentioned, that the market is still small. It's not worth it yet to take fees. I think 1inch, they already monetized their private pool, if I'm not mistaken. That's at least what they said. So speed is a big value proposition for us, either for our UI, because it significantly improved the UX. So we see users switching from other services to us for that specific reason, because in their reasoning, I can get the best price here and there, but here I know I get the latest price and the real-time price, and I get the best ease of use, because I click on a button and I have it's like an Uberized way of doing DEX aggregation, if you would. So the UX is definitely very important for the UI, but also very important for the dApps and the wallets that are going to integrate us, because we will offer them the best UX for their users. their users will not have to wait for like 10-20 seconds to get a price, which is not optimal. And also users are coming from the centralized world. They are coming from the centralized finance, or like the CFI or the traditional finance. They are not used to wait for a price to show up after many seconds. They are not used to click on a button and tell them, sorry, the transaction has failed, and also wait for a few minutes, a few hours. So UX is very critical, I think. It's a bet that we're making on providing this best UX. So I would say currently the main difference is in the UX and getting the real-time prices. But also we're building more for dApps to integrate us. So UI right now is what's working, obviously, more, but we're preparing the backend and tech to onboard as much dApps and wallets in the future than for our UI, which can perceive it as a proof of concept of what we're doing.
Great. And I see in the upper part of the platform that you have other services in addition to aggregator. I see price alerts or pools.
Yeah. So here it's similar to what you could find in Uniswap. You can do the swap, and the result can be sent to another address. But here it was an experiment which started getting some traction recently, where users, what they do the swap, then they send it to another address. Typically what happens, users have their funds on a ledger and they put in some in MetaMask. So they do the trade and then they would transfer to back to ledger for safety. So here it automates that for them, but it wasn't our aim in the beginning. We wanted to do just a payments feature for wallets, and that was a proof of concept. But now users are like hacking this feature. So now we're gonna upgrade it because it lacks some features. Like for instance, here it will consider the slippage amount as the target amount. It will send you back the rest as a payment. If you pay, you receive the rest. So the next version, it will be a pure payment and also a pure, like a separate transfer function. So yeah, that was an experiment among others. That's what we do. Typically, we launch new features and we try to collect feedback either by talking to users, say directly what they say, what they think, which is very, very helpful. But sometimes looking at the usage, how people are using these tools, and then trying to ask them some questions if we know them. And that's the insight we got from this feature.
Great.
And Mounir, we have a few users that has at home a commercial activity, for example, and they are interested to make some revenues in cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And but they don't want to be exposed to the crypto, so they want to receive DAI or Tether. It's okay. Yeah. And they can use this service for this.
You mean for payments?
For payments, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But not this version. This version is, but it works. But as I said, it has some flows that you may not receive the real expected amount unless there is no slippage at all. But yeah, the next version they could use it for payment, like Coinbase Commerce, for instance.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we have a dApp. It's called Ethic Hub. They are not using this feature. They are like using a proxy contract that automates that, and they allow anyone to fund. It's like a decentralized microfinancing platform. They allow anyone to finance like farmers and artisans all over the world in DAI. So they integrated Paraswap so that others can pay in ETH, and the farmers receive DAI, which at the end would receive dollars and euros. But that's exactly the idea you were saying. I can pay with any token I have, and the other person would receive DAI or USDC, will receive a stable coin, so that they will be safe against volatility. And
it would be great also to have CDAI or
ADAI or whatever.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. CDAI is definitely getting interest.
Earn. What is this section? How it works?
So that's similar. If you would, for those who know Uniswap, like in this place where you can add liquidity to a pool. So that's the same thing, but for Bancor, and also started an experiment with Bancor in late December. So here you can provide liquidity, for instance, to USDT, SUSD, or PBTC or ZRX, and you earn on trading fees. For instance, if you have 50% of the pool and the trading fees are 0.1, so you're getting 0.1% of every trade. You're getting 0.5% of every trade, and yeah, it's a way of growing your money. So Bancor works a little bit like Uniswap. You have to put 50% token and 50% in USDB or in BNT, and it will balance between both. So it should keep always this balance of 50%, 30% both. And that also worked pretty well. We had some users who are using this every day and coming every day and adding liquidity and adding more and withdrawing their profits. We see this activity happening since we launched. Yeah. So now we're gonna build in the future also for Uniswap, for Curve, for Balancer, for other tools, so that we can serve these users, but we can also provide that to our dApps that will integrate us. They will have all these widgets and SDK features that will allow them to implement that for the users easily.
And just to be more, to explain better how it works. So, for example, users that want to contribute with SNX, let's say,
yeah,
they click on supply. They have to specify the same amount here.
Yeah. So, for instance, if you put 10 SNX, it will compute the amount to supply in USDB, and vice versa.
Then I supply with MetaMask, and what will be my revenue if the trading fees are 0.3%?
So it will be proportional to your share on the pool. For instance, if you have, say, to simplify, if you have 100% of the pool, so you will get 0.3% of every trade. If you have 50%, you will get half of that, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, thank you.
That's pretty interesting.
And about what Emiliano was saying before about the price alerts.
Yeah.
And this one, what kind of feature is, how it works? So, for example, if the price of one Ethereum, but it's just Ethereum for now, or I can.
Yes, it's very limited right now. It's all driven by the usage, and now we still started having some questions. It depends on the tokens you selected on the UI, on the previous UI. So if you go back and you put USDC
and change the pay,
change back to
Okay.
Or BAT, for instance, if you do price alerts.
Yeah, BAT
that's right now. So yeah, that was a so it's like a small MVPs we're building each time and looking for the traction of each one. So that one took some time to get some traction, and also one of the ideas behind the price alerts is preparing for limit orders in the future. So we wanted to see, are there enough people interested in doing limit orders, and those are people who are not willing to buy right now at the current price. They are waiting. They have target prices, and also dApps can use this feature. If you come back, you can click on the price alerts. You will see that you can receive alerts through an email or through an URI. That's useful for bots and for dApps.
For integrations.
It's webhooks, yeah. Exactly, for integrations, yes.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I mean, it's a very comprehensive from that point. Okay, before going about the security, that is one of the questions that the user asked to us. What about numbers? So, what about the amount of trades that you see? I mean, how many trades you have, and how much is the volume, the monthly volume, and what's the growth that you saw in the last months?
So we have a sustainable growth. Last month we processed $12 million, almost 12.7, so almost $13 million of USD, of US dollars. You can go to paraswap.io/stats, stats, statistics, stats with S at the end. you will see the dashboard, like June analytics dashboard, that will show you the numbers of, it's this one, yeah. So yeah, almost processed $19 million in USD since we launched. And we had some peaks, like if you see the daily
On the merch,
on the left. Yeah, you see the daily, that was the Black Thursday. It was 2.3 million.
It's the growth. It's really impressive, the growth.
Yeah.
Month over month, it's good, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the question from Tommaso Bianchi related to the pools that you have on Paraswap. It's related to the impermanent loss. I think that it's comparable to Uniswap, right,
Yeah,
Mounir? So
exactly.
basically, it's the same that you may have.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Exactly the same. With an extra risk, right, when you're using Bancor, because BNT is also more volatile and less liquid than ETH. So Uniswap it's just less risky. I mean, you still have the same risk factor, but yeah, if you're using Bancor. But that's why what I like about Bancor is they have also a stable coin. You can have pools with the USDB. So it's less risky, especially when the market goes down, since it will do the rebalance. It's like it will buy for you and protect your losses, but there will always be some kind of impermanent loss, of course.
Okay, so it's greater from a risk perspective than Uniswap ATH pool. But I think that in this sense, balance will provide a good support on the ecosystem for protecting you from impermanent losses. Okay, and one of the most important things right now is the security. We already know about Fulcrum, the attacks. We know about the Black Thursday on Maker, and we know that we have some, not so much, to be honest, few options to protect from issues that we may have. So my question is, how much we can trust Paraswap? There is an audit, there is an insurance. I see something on the homepage related to Nexus Mutual.
Yeah. So we definitely have way less risk than Maker and BZX, for the simple reason that we don't hold user tokens. So our contract doesn't hold any funds. That's definitely makes us way less risky for users, and the contract is more or less simple compared to these protocols who have to process liquidations, have to rely on oracles and so on. That's like in terms of a risk factor that makes us less risky. But it doesn't mean that can be bugs. It's software at the end. Bugs can happen. And one of our competitors once lost $26,000 in 2 transactions. So it's hard to have zero risk. That's not possible in any software. So audits helps a lot. So in the next version will be audited. This one wasn't really, but the next one will be because we introduced some more complexity. So definitely now it's needed. And also to mitigate the risk, we have Nexus Mutual, which is in insurance, where if users would lose funds because of a bug or a hack, they will be refunded up to 1,000 ETH, which is today should be something like $150,000. Yeah, there is 138 where
like the bank insurance, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it varies. It's volatile, but it's 1,000 ETH. And the way it works by default is that we should do the claim on their behalf, and Nexus will refund us, and then we should refund them, which is good. But users can themselves go to Nexus and can buy a cover so that they can make the claim without talking to us, without even us knowing. Well, obviously we'll know if there is a bug, if there is a loss, that should be something that will be known. But yes, they don't even need to rely on our good faith or good willing. They can do it themselves. That's what is great about Nexus, and we're looking into Opin as well and Slash in the future.
And can you explain a little bit for me, for example, from non-technical perspective? So let's say if I use Paraswap, for example, exchanging, I don't know, 100 Ethereum or whatever, what is, given the fact that you are not managing or holding my assets like MakerDAO, for example, can do, what are the risks that I'm incurring? So, I mean, when I swap, what can I lose?
Yeah, so the risk, at least the ones we have seen, is the contract doesn't fully execute your transaction, and some of the tokens are stuck. And that's exactly what happens before. You send 2 ETH and you are expecting 400 DAI, but the contract executes only 2 ETH and sends you back only half of the DAI you were expecting, and the second ETH still stuck on the contract. So someone else could even do it maliciously or just because they are doing the opposite trade. They will collect the 2 ETH that are left on the contract. That goes both sides as well. If you receive, if the contract will send you only half of what it received or not as much as it received, you will the rest will stay on the contract, and the opposite trade will collect what's left on the contract.
So the
That's something that
intrinsic
happened to an inch before.
intrinsic
So
risk.
that's a risk. The other risk that we mitigated also from the beginning, it's what we call man-in-the-middle attacks. So what could happen when a transaction would contain do 10% in Uniswap, do 80% in Kyber, do 10% in Oasis, for instance. So those are addresses of this contract that we pass in as parameters. We say this is Uniswap, this is Kyber, and this is Oasis. So if there is a hacker or like a middleman attack, what they will do, they can just alter those addresses on your behalf, like without you knowing. They would change, for instance, the address of Uniswap, and it will execute on a contract that looks like Uniswap, but it's not Uniswap, and it will make you lose your money or at least steal a little bit from you. And for us, we created like a whitelist of all those exchanges we are using. So even though there is this man-in-the-middle attack, the transaction will just fail.
Okay, so about the second one, you have removed basically this risk, I mean, with the whitelist.
Yeah.
So there is the first one. And for example, just to keep, just to stay like few seconds more about this topic of the insurance. If there is if the first risk happens and there is this kind of hack, for example, the problem, how it works in that case, Nexus Mutual? So how can I have back my Ethereum?
So you should go to the Nexus Mutual website. They have a claim section where you put a claim and you put the details. That's the smart contracts. That's exactly what happens. Those are the steps. And then they have some kind of a DAO, if you want to see it like that. It's not as decentralized right now as a DAO, but they are going on this step. They will vote. They will vote using their token, which is an MXM, it's the Nexus Mutual token. If you have the majority votes, you will be refunded. Otherwise, you will be declined. So that's what happens during the BZX attack. Someone was able to get $60,000, around $60,000 refund after they claimed they have lost this amount on Nexus Mutual, and he or she had enough votes, so they were refunded.
Yeah. I'm answering to a user that was asking for more explaining about the man-in-the-middle attack. Okay, great. So coming up to the past and then to the future, what's the hardest challenge that you face, Mounir, in the realization of Paraswap?
Yeah, well, I would say the biggest one is understanding the markets and understanding what users really want. That was the first iteration we created with the Expedia model, and it was very interesting because of lacking the traction and getting to know what users really want. And it's hard to catch, even though when you know it at the end, it seems obvious, which is the price. People want the best prices. It's obvious, but it's not, because in the beginning, people would say, let's build the best UI, let's build the best UX, and so on. But it's not enough. I would say it's definitely important. But what we learned is this combination you can make between the good UX, the speed, the ease of use, and the best prices, and also knowing how to communicate about this. So that was hard to figure out in the fine details. Broadly speaking, it seems obvious, but yes, getting to also getting trust, and I think that's also something we learned. Even though we speak about trust, verify, not trust, and so on. But I think trust is still something very important in DeFi, because people, because of those issues we had, obviously, those hacks and those problems. So people need to at least trust you. You have the ability to deliver and to deliver something correct. People don't have the time to always go read your contract and do the audits, but people, you need to provide a way to verify for those people. So you need to show like good hands, or I don't know the terms in English, the term in English, but also you need to keep always a way to verify and be as much transparent about it. So figuring out all of this was the biggest challenge that we face in building a product that can be used, it has enough traction, it can grow in the future.
Great. This is very interesting because could be a very good insight for people like me and Simone that we know obviously this kind of stuff, but also for just to have a confirmation, but also for others that maybe can be in our group, that for sure there will be, that want to build something. So the challenges, this is a very particular market, share some of the challenges that you may have in traditional market, but it's a specific market. So as you mentioned, you started at the beginning with something that should have traction, but at the end it didn't have, and pivoted to another version. So what about the next features or the next evolution of Paraswap in the next months and weeks?
Yeah, so now we're working on a V2 of the smart contracts. It will allow users to make some transactions that are not possible today. For instance, if you go try to swap between an ETH to an idle, for instance, I think that's will give you zero right now, because idle is a DAI to idle DAI, for instance. That's an example among others. If you do some trades, you will get a very, very bad price. So what we're building, it's something, the idea, we have it, and we launch like a small variation of it called multipath. That will allow you to connect some tokens with the others. For instance, you're doing a ETH to idle DAI, it will go through DAI, so it will convert ETH to DAI, and then DAI to idle DAI. So you will get the best possible price, because you are doing the best possible path. You are converting DAI to idle DAI, which is the best way of acquiring idle DAI, and the same thing from ETH to DAI. And that's a feature we're launching. We're launching two kinds of this, two like options or variations of it. One is for the UI, and it will have these connectors that we will be choosing and we will be improving over time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're launching one for algo traders. That's where they can themselves select the path they want. So that's typically used in arbitrage trading. It's like you create many paths and you do some like a graph and find the best route and so on, the shortest route, shortest path, sorry. And so we can automate that for them, and they can use our contract and say, okay, my algorithm, my specific algorithm, I don't want to use the Paraswap's algorithm. I want them just to find me the best DEXs to use for this algorithm. And I will give them do ETH to DAI to USDC to CDAI, and then come back to DAI and idle DAI, just like a broad example. because they found themselves with their algo that this is the best route. So the new contract will enable these use cases for that. And the next one will enable flash loans as well. So you can, within the same transaction, lend some ETH or USDC or DAI, and also do this multi-path transaction. That's something.
Will it be for a normal users, or the users need to have some coding skills?
So this will be for algo traders, because it will require you to compute those connectors. Normal users will use our selection, if you want, that we will be improving, but it will be always static. We can't do all the possibilities. It's just not feasible in a reasonable time. But algo traders, they have the tools and they have the skill, the technical tools to do that. So it will be for technical users, at least in the beginning.
And what about the integration with Balancer? That is a project that right now it's really discussed in the space.
Yeah, we love Balancer. We were in contact with them. It's been a while, but yes, we haven't looked into. We were like all on those new features. So now, yes, we'll be working with Balancer on integrating them as a source of liquidity like Uniswap and Kyber, but we're also looking to integrate them on the private pool. For the liquidity source, it should happen like maximum a week after the new contracts. And for the private pool, that's a discussion we'll be having. It should also find the market makers that are interested and also build the right tools. So it will take a little bit more.
How will it be integrated Balancer for the private pools?
So it will be integrated for the price feed, for automating the price feed. For instance, instead of you building an algorithm that will make the arbitrage and determine the price, say now the price of ETH is 200, an hour later it's 210, you will let the pool figure out the price, because that much ETH was sold, the pool was rebalanced, there is less ETH and more DAI, for instance, and USDC. So the price will be influenced, and you will also only change the parameters and change the fee model and change. It's a different approach you have as a trader to monetizing your funds, or like making profit over your funds.
Yeah.
And another question related to the next features that we received from the users is, are you going to integrate the limit orders?
Yeah. So there are two ways of integrating. It is doing something like 0x layer, which is what DexAG and 1inch did, which is cool. We like the feature. But the limit orders we're looking to make is something that will use our aggregator. Something, because if, rationally speaking, if you have a target price and say, I want to sell my ETH only for 200 DAI, and now the price is 150, for instance, if you would use our aggregator, since it's supposed to beat the market price, so that reach or that cross should happen in Paraswap before it will happen on any other markets or any other decentralized exchange, of course. Because we have often a slightly or better price than the market. So you are reaching 200, it will reach 200 in Paraswap, and that could create either an arbitrage opportunity, because you can at the same time buy it in Paraswap at 200 and sell it back on the market and earn on this profit, because you are have some kind of guarantee, probability speaking, that you will be making a profit in a high probability. But also it's just the best acquisition price. You are going to buy better than the markets more often than not. But it's hard to make it this way, because you will be either creating a matching engine that is running on our servers, which creates a lot of complexity in terms of security. So that matching engine has to be resilient and very secure, in order not to spend more than it should be, in order not to be custodial and all that stuff, which is possible. And others are doing this, like DexBlue, IDEX, and so on. But we try to be as much decentralized as possible. So we are looking or some ways to have some kind of network of executors that will execute those orders without us having to run this matching engine in our service. That's a project for 2020.
Yeah. And for example, me that I use decentralized exchange and also centralized exchange, another feature that could be used, it's some exchanges called stop order.
Yeah.
So if I want, for example, limited my loss, if I have a short position or if I have even if I have a long position, and I want to put a limit order but under the price right now, is a sell order under the price. So it would be something that I think it's pretty useful for the algo traders.
Definitely, yes. Yes, with limit orders, this kind of features will become important and will become possible as well. Currently, it's not. Okay. But with limit orders, currently you can only do it yourself by running your own bots in your infrastructure on your computer. But in the future, yes, with generalized limit order, it will be possible, this kind of features.
And regarding, for example, the structure of the company right now, how many people you are, and are you, for example, how do you sustain yourself? Because I mean, you are not charging any fees now.
Well, we have Kyber, but it's not enough. It's just pays for the gas and maybe for servers. So we don't have that much spending on the servers. So we have made a pre-seed round of a very, very small round, but it was a strategic round to onboard the Julian Bootloop, who is the founder of the State Capital. That helps us not to pay for ourselves and for employees, but helps us as well on doing things like paying for audits and maybe having a new UX designer and things like that. And preparing for the next round, we're looking to raise a seed round in order to accelerate and not have to charge fees right now. That's how we perceive it, unless things could change in the future. But yes, we are not paid, and mostly the company officially has me and Julian as an investor, and will be onboarding Breeze and Samip in the future.
Okay, so 4 people basically in this moment.
Yeah. And Pascal, sorry.
Pascal.
From Gardens Network. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Poor Pascal.
His role is very important. He is an advisor, and he has a lot of expertise in trading in forex markets. So he helped us on selecting new products, new financial products, and his expertise in DeFi itself, it has a lot of value to us. So he's an advisor of the company.
And a question from more, market side is given you are basically working in the DEX space since 2018, and in the last 1 year, 18 months, DEX have been increased their volume.
Yeah.
So how do you see the future of DEX, and do you think that volumes are going to increase more, and why people are starting to trade on DEX, and what are the reasons why they need to shift from centralized to a decentralized exchange?
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely think that DEXs are the future of exchanges. Today, people still trade on centralized exchanges out of the same reasons, that are convenience and ease of use. But I think people, with all those incidents we have with centralized exchanges, being hacked and lost of money and disappeared, the CEO who disappears with $200 million and things like that, people start to be aware of the risk of trusting a third party with their funds. So I think that contributes a lot for people to switch into decentralized exchanges. And I think, theoretically speaking, a decentralized exchange should be more convenient than a centralized exchange if you're not holding all your funds on a centralized exchange. Because if you go to a Paraswap or like a Uniswap and so on, you have your wallet, you make the trade, and you receive back the other token, and you're done. But if you do it in a centralized exchange, you have to deposit, wait for a few blocks, do your trades, have this trust factor, and then withdraw, which is too long for a user. The condition is that they are not or willing to trust the centralized exchange. So I think we just need to figure out this user layer, or like this UI layer, very well. And many dApps are doing a great job, but I do, and Argent and Monolith and all those dApps are doing a great job of matching the performance of any custodial, and having the user being able to have the same security guarantees of not losing their funds while having custody. So I think with the development of those UI layers, we will not have less reasons to use centralized exchanges than decentralized exchanges. Obviously, the liquidity is the biggest factor, but that's something that grows in a step-by-step fashion. So more users are using those dApps and wallets and have a better experience, the less need to go to a centralized exchange. The liquidity should grow, along the.
Yeah, I agree with you, but also another point I think is the scalability and the velocity of the trades, because if another 12 March happens, people people wanted to trade, sorry, during that day, because there were a lot of opportunity, but they cannot.
I understand. Yeah, that was many users were complaining about that, and that was legitimate. But that's why we're bullish on ETH 2.0. We're all waiting for ETH 2.0 and have those cool features that will allow users to make fast trades. Yeah, I think that's a great solution, and Ethereum is moving slowly, but in a more like robust way, not sacrificing decentralization, unlike other blockchains who, for instance, if you go to EOS, you can make instantaneous transactions, gasless transactions, which is great. I personally like the tech, but it sacrifices a lot of decentralization. So Ethereum, I would say once it's done, the layer 2, like ETH 2.0 is done, we will get there somehow. We will have much more or less this performance of centralized exchanges. I don't see them going away, definitely, because no matter how performant the blockchain could be, it could never replace a centralized server, but it will switch the use cases. If you want to do real high frequency trading, you may be doing this in a centralized exchange, or like a specific blockchain that does that. But for the general use, the normal use, I would tend to say ETH 2.0 would be enough.
Mm-hmm.
I have other questions related to this, like for example, what do you think about loop ring and optimistic roll up or whatever? But I think that we can do another meetup or another AMA to discuss about it, because it could be longer. Yeah. I was looking for the other answers from the users. I think that we covered most of them. I mean, all of them. So from my point of view, I'm pretty satisfied. I think Simone too, from his face. So the question that we always ask. Okay, no, there is a question. Okay, yes. What's your feedback about when will be live Ethereum 2? At least the.
It's hard to say that. It's hard to say. I'm very optimistic for 2020, but it's very hard to say. And I would prefer that the core team takes more time and build something solid than trying to just hurry and satisfy the needs of everyone, like us, like any DEXs or any dApp, and doing some sacrifices on security. I would prefer that it take another year, and it will have a solid framework than doing this as fast as possible.
Yes, we know that Ethereum 2 has several phases, and yes, I hope that the phase 0 will be probably at the second part of the year. Yeah, but we will see. So the final question from for you is if you have any question for me, Simone, or the DeFi Italy community.
Well, I have to think about a question, but how do you do the meetups right now after the lockdown? How is it doing? We have a meetup like yours in France, at DeFi France, and we're looking to make the next one online. And it would be great to have your experience and your feedback about making meetups online.
Basically, we want to do physically because we saw that you get more people and it also an opportunity to meet up each other basically. So we hold it online, so with a Zoom call like this one. We have as guest Emilio from AAVE and Maria Magenes from MakerDAO, and we discussed about the Black Thursday also because
and Alessandro
Preti from Binance basically. And yes, the participation for the user was by the YouTube chat, the YouTube live chat. And to be honest, I'm participating to some meetup that, you know, intercon, non-con, or whatever, to see how they do that. I see that there are some of them that are very extreme. I mean that they use VR technologies to, you know, to be like Second Life. Depends a lot on what about your users. So basically, you know them, so you know the community, and you can understand which could be the best fit. Anyway, from our experience, a very easy Zoom call with a YouTube live would be a very good opportunity.
Cool.
Thank you very much for this conversation, e grazie a tutti i partecipanti che ci hanno seguito. Ciao Mounir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ciao. Adieu.
Ciao.